Hello, everyone, and welcome to a conversation about knowing your biomarker. My name is Andrew Spiegel, and I am the Executive Director of the Global Colon Cancer Association. We're thrilled today to bring you this presentation about what colorectal cancer patients need to know about when it comes to knowing their biomarker status. And Know Your Biomarker is a program of the Global Colon Cancer Association. And special thanks go out to our sponsors of the Know Your Biomarker program, which are Bristol Myers Squibb, Bayer, and Seattle Genomics. These partners make the programs that we deliver possible, and so we thank them for their continued support of our organization. We are excited today to bring you and introduce you to some amazing panelists who are going to share their stories and share some data with you about our Know Your Biomarker program. And you're going to watch a video today of one of our panelists, Tom, his physicians, and you'll hear firsthand his story about how knowing his biomarker may have actually saved his life. So today we have Aurora Seminara. She is the Director of Biomarkers and Diagnostics of Bristol Myers Squibb. And we have Tom. Tom Vibert is a colon cancer survivor, and he is our spokesperson for the Know Your Biomarker program. We also have on today Nicole Sheahan, who is the nuts and bolts behind everything that's going on at the GCCA these days. So we're really thrilled to have Nicole helping us out. And I want everybody to know that if you have any questions about the content of this presentation or about biomarkers in general, please email us at info@globalcca.org. That's info@globalcca.org. Or reach out to us on our social media networks. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram. Look for us at Global CRC, colorectal cancer, Global CRC. And we'll be posting questions and answers on our website as well, which is globalcca.org. So enjoy the presentation. And remember, these webinars are made available to rewatch and to share with your friends and family and other colorectal cancer survivors. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Aurora, who's going to give us a background on biomarkers and why it's important to get tested. So Aurora, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak to you today about the importance of biomarker testing. And thank you for the introduction. My name is Aurora Seminara, and I am the Director of Biomarkers and Diagnostics in the Worldwide Medical Organization at Bristol Myers Squibb. My disclosures. So I'm just going to give a brief presentation, but the objectives are really to understand what is meant by personalized medicine or precision medicine, and then really define what is a biomarker, what is it, how is it measured, and why is it important in cancer care. I wanted to start with personalized medicine. You may have heard these terms, either personalized medicine or precision medicine, and we really, there could be a lot of different definitions, but what it does is it's classifying basically, it's the art of personalizing medicine to a patient. And so a tumor could have different biomarkers. It could be genes, it could be proteins, there could be different factors that make us each individual. And that could be something that is like a host factor, something that you specifically have genetically, or it could be something that your tumor has developed or acquired over time. And so people with that are diagnosed with cancer, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach, meaning that what treatment will work for one patient might not work for another patient. And then there could be some commonalities in certain cancer types as well, and those commonalities could help to treat a patient to treat those types of commonalities. So when we talk about a biomarker, and it's a kind of a compound word like bio and marker, and so bio is because it has to do with the body, with your biology, and marker is a specific feature, so a feature or characteristic, something that can be identified and measured. And examples of these are your genes and proteins, which are different markers that can be measured in your body. And these biomarkers can be measured, and these tests can actually help to really direct you towards a certain treatment. So there may be a different likelihood that you could potentially benefit from one treatment over another. To give an example, we have just two hypothetical people here. We have Alice and we have Jerry, and the symbols that we have in the note in the little bubbles are really just a representation that Alice may have very different biomarkers than Jerry. They both may be diagnosed with the same type of cancer, but their tumors could be very different. And because of this, that's really why it's important to measure these different biomarkers to see how does it vary from one person through the other, and can we tailor the treatment to the biomarker profile of that patient, and that could have to do with the amount, the type, the combination, and that's really what we have on here. Is that when you talk about biomarkers, there's lots of variations. You could talk about how much of a biomarker you have. Sometimes it's a matter of, is it present or is it absent? Like, do I have a mutation in a certain gene, or am I lacking something? So that could be more around the amount, or how much do we have? Sometimes there are biomarkers that are not all or nothing. You can have a degree, you can have low expression of a biomarker, or you can have high expression of a biomarker. And sometimes that actually makes a difference of how much you actually have. The type of biomarker can also make a difference. So treatment B may work better in a person that has little, these represented by like the big triangle, versus like if it was like low on the biomarker test, if it comes back as like on a low level, maybe it won't work. There's also different types in that it could be on the gene level, but not on the protein level. And that's a little bit, that's the difference too, is that just because you have it in your genetics, it's not always translated into the protein. So there's some differences there that need to be considered. And then there's combinations of biomarkers. And so sometimes you can have multiple features, multiple factors going on. And this is an area that is an active area of investigation, of really looking at the totality of a biomarker profile and what that actually tells the physician. So, why test? Why is it so important? The same way that we had showed the different biomarkers earlier between Alice and Jerry, it's similar. We have here, like if you look at the little people on the screen, you see some of them are orange, some of them are green. And what that signifies is that patients are different. We're very variable. The same way that some of us have brown eyes and some of us have green eyes, our genetics are different as well. And then, as I mentioned, when you have cancer, there could be many factors that could be causing that cancer. Sometimes there are some genetic factors that predispose you to cancer. Other times it could be environmental. There could be environmental factors that are involved, or causing it, whether it's UV from the sunlight, or just carcinogens that we could be exposed to. There's multiple factors, and because there's multiple factors that actually can cause the cancer, what that translates into is that there could be different biomarkers, and that not every patient is really, not every patient's cancer is the same. So the way that you have your different options with treatment, you can have one treatment choice where you're treating all of the patients. And what you notice is that some patients will respond and others don't. And that's why there's a lot of research that's ongoing where you treat an entire population, but then you do a second step where you're looking into what made these patients respond and what make these patients less likely to respond. And that's part of what we do, what we're doing at Bristol Myers Squibb and other companies as well, is trying to really identify why some patients will be more likely to respond to some therapy versus another therapy. And so the hope is that we can identify treatments that would address these different biomarkers. And so you could say that if these patients have a specific biomarker, they may be less likely to respond to one therapy, but they may be more likely to respond to a different therapy. There's a hypothetical little curve on this page, but with the hope is that we can raise the bar and really improve outcomes for patients. Include how many patients will respond to therapy, and then ultimately the ultimate goal would be, can people survive longer with specific tailored treatment. And so knowing your biomarkers can actually inform treatment decisions. It can help an oncologist choose the right treatment for you. So rather than the approach to treat all patients the same way, your biomarkers may direct you to a different treatment that may work better for you. These are just a little bit about the different types of tests, the different technologies that you might hear. One is immunohistochemistry. What this is that often when you're diagnosed, or before you're diagnosed, they usually take a biopsy to diagnose you with cancer. The same biopsy can be used. They could take a tissue sample and stain it with different antibodies and look at different proteins that your tumor tissue may express. An example of this is PD-L1, which is a protein that is expressed in a number of cancers, and then this could be could be expressed in the picture we're showing EGFR, which is another protein. Another type of assay is called fluorescence in situ hybridization. This is used often to detect either single gene alterations. It could also be like rearrangements. Sometimes you could have two genes and they basically their DNA rearranges. It sort of swaps. And that's very interesting too, because that is an alteration that that has been shown to drive certain cancers. And then the last one on the slide is next generation sequencing, which you might have heard of. You also may have heard genomic profiling. That's another term that is common. And what this is doing is it's basically allows us to look at multiple genes at once. There are panels that can look at hundreds of genes. There are smaller panels which will maybe could look at maybe 10 genes or so. And then there are panels that can look at like over 500 genes, or even more. And so what that really allows you to do is to look at multiple genes at the same time. So you might be an example that I had given was KRAS, but there's multiple genes that you could look at. BRAF, there's the PIK3CA, and then they're also able to detect certain other types of biomarkers or like a totality of the number of mutations, or things like microsatellite instability, which I'll talk about a little bit on the next slide. But the beauty of these types of assays is that you can actually test for multiple biomarkers at once. And just a little bit about I mentioned microsatellite instability, and it's a bit of a complicated scenario. But you're going to hear a little bit about it later. So just to give some background, when you're looking at your DNA, when your DNA replicates, sometimes it makes mistakes, And so microsatellites are basically small areas, like little small units of DNA that get replicated. And sometimes in the replication, there's mistakes that are entered into the DNA. So sometimes the mistake is an additional, it could be like something additional that wasn't supposed to be there. And sometimes it's a deletion. So something should have been there and it's no longer there. And then what happens with these, with the DNA is DNA has mechanisms in place to repair DNA, to repair these little defects. But sometimes those repair mechanisms don't always work. There's defects in the mechanisms that repair the DNA. You know, and in some cases where an error is incorporated, you know, your system is supposed to eliminate that DNA, and so it doesn't replicate. But in other cases, it does replicate, and we may not have the proper machinery in order to repair the replication errors. And so what's called microsatellite instability is this accumulation of these errors in the DNA within these specific repeats. And so that's really the background that I wanted to give on biomarkers. And really the idea is to ensure a more patient-centered cancer care so that we're not treating all patients the same way, that we really recognize that each patient is individual and is different, and that their tumors, their cancer might be different, and there may be treatment strategies that are more effective. And the other flip side of that is that we're also trying to treat patients with treatments that will, you know, treat their tumor with as little side effects as possible. I mean, all therapies have side effects. We come to know that very well. But the hope is that if you're treating a patient more, you know, with strategies that are more guided towards the cancer, that it could help mitigate some side effects. And this is just to give an example that these are all these different biomarkers that we had mentioned, and that some of these can help doctors customize treatment for the patient as we move forward in time. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. That was so helpful. Really appreciate the different graphics. That's always very helpful for those of us that did not go to medical school or have a medical background. I think it's really helpful to see those graphics. So thank you for explaining that for those of us that really need it broken down like that. I appreciate that, Aurora.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm very excited to share with you our Know Your Biomarker campaign, and I'm just going to share with you our website, and we're going to, in just a minute, introduce you to the face of the campaign, Tom, who has graciously shared his very inspirational story with us. So knowyourbiomarker.org is our website that has information here about biomarkers. We also have a fact sheet that you can download, just basically giving you the key information that you need to know, and also some questions that you may want to ask your doctor. We really believe that it's important to have an open dialogue with your medical professionals, and for that, we have a number of tools here on this website. So we encourage you to check out knowyourbiomarker.org. And if you have, again, any questions during this presentation, feel free to email us at globalcca.org, or you can reach out to us on social media. So before I introduce you to Tom, I'm going to just play his video, and then you'll get to meet him in person. So here is Tom's story.
My name is Tom, and I'm a colon cancer survivor. I was having some abdominal pain back in 2012, and it was during a routine physical that I was telling my doctor that, and he told me it needed to get checked out. And within a couple of days, I was having a CT scan, and the next day I was in front of a surgeon. Initially, I thought it was just a situation where the removal was going to be the final process, surgery, and then I was done. But when the surgeon mentioned that I was going to be doing some chemotherapy, then I knew things were a little more severe than I thought. Before the chemo regimens were going to start, my local oncologist was telling me to go get genetics testing done. He didn't tell me that I had to, but he highly suggested that I get this done. And I thought about it actually for a couple of days, but
Tom was referred for genetic counseling at Cone because of his early onset of cancer and his family history of cancer. Biomarker testing can help us determine if somebody would be at a higher risk for having a hereditary cancer syndrome, or it could tell us whether somebody might have different types of treatment options.
I'm John Strickler. I'm a GI medical oncologist here at the Duke Cancer Institute. We work very closely with our community oncologists to help identify patients who might benefit from some of our innovative clinical trials. So this local medical oncologist worked hard and found Tom and referred Tom to me. The day I met Tom, he was a different guy than you'll see right now. So he had been treated for around 2 years with conventional chemotherapy. This is chemotherapy that's been around for many years. The treatments he had been on to that point are not curative. They're really designed to help people live longer and hopefully preserve quality of life. Unfortunately, Tom had experienced disease progression on all of those standard therapies, so he had very limited options left. And at the time that he came in, he had significant symptoms from his cancer. It had spread in his abdomen in a way that was causing him tremendous pain. I think he would agree that it was a very difficult time for him in his life. When we met him, he was struggling with severe pain despite being on very large doses of narcotics. And he was not sleeping well, not eating well, losing weight, and feeling pretty terrible.
the people I work with have seen me in good times and bad. A lot of them don't tell you that, they didn't think you were going to make it. They don't want that in your ear, but they tell me that now. My whole life was, built around doing a lot of physical stuff, bike riding, running, tennis, and when this happened, it was something that I had to give up for a little while. When I first got the biomarker testing, I didn't know what it was going to lead to until the chemo sessions, the radiation, they didn't work. I knew it was the biomarker testing that got me involved in a treatment session that really made the difference.
There are many different types of biomarkers out there, and it can be confusing when you hear that term to understand what a biomarker is. The types of biomarkers that we focus on are what we call predictive biomarkers. So we're looking for biomarkers that would predict that a patient would benefit from a personalized treatment. That's what occurred in Tom's case, where he had a predictive biomarker that suggested that he might benefit from immune therapy. When we gave the immune therapy, it basically unleashed his immune system to go ahead and attack his tumor.
When I came back for that second session, I asked Dr. Strickler, do I still need to be on these pain meds?
He was still on high doses of narcotics, but he found that his pain was much better controlled very quickly after receiving that first dose. So he came back to see me 2 weeks later and he said, Dr. Strickler, I want to just stop them. And I said, look, Tom, we got to take a step back. Let's slowly taper off these pain medicines and see if we can get you down to 0 on them and see if we can get this pain under control. And amazingly, he tapered off those medicines over a couple of weeks. And by the time I was seeing him 2 weeks later, he was back to biking and exercising and had his life back again.
The sessions that were going on or the type that you continue to do while you can tolerate them. So I'd gone over 2 years with this treatment, and CT scans are showing now that it's not even on the radar. When I came off of the treatments in 2017, I was able to get back to bike riding, running, and doing whatever I was doing prior to that. When we first started treatment, my mother was looking for a way to kind of make a presence, so she actually made a donation to the Cancer Institute where I was having the treatment done, and there's a plaque in the garden out there that'll be there forever, so it's kind of a symbol for her and myself. And just, a little way of her sending me a message and the doctors a message for taking care of my cancer.
In the old days of cancer treatment, it was one size fits all. A patient was diagnosed with an advanced cancer and we would give a standard chemotherapy regardless of what was driving that tumor. In the era of personalized medicine, we're increasingly finding that a cancer type is not just one tumor, it may be any number of different types of tumors. And we're finding personalized treatments that uncover the biology of the tumor and attack the drivers of that tumor.
And often when I talk to people about my story, and I know they have cancer too, they want to know what I go through, what are my side effects. Side effects are always a hot topic, but I also ask them if they got screened, because that's the thing that led me to the treatment that really made the big difference.
While not everybody has the same reaction to this personalized medicine, or may not have the same outcome in regards to their biomarker testing, it brings a lot of hope, and it's very exciting to be in this time when we can utilize this information to help benefit our patients.
Whenever someone comes here for trial, we never know for sure if the trial is going to help the patient, and we're clear to patients that not everyone benefits, but I felt like he had as good a shot as anyone of getting benefit from that trial. I think about that first day when he was so sick and struggled even to sit up in a chair to talk to me that day, to the path that he went through over 2 years, to seeing him get his life back and hearing his stories of riding 100 miles on his bike, which was always a dream of ours when we first met, because it's something he really loved.
I always used to come to him and I'd show him my bike rides that I was doing, and he'd always say, oh, 30 miles, couldn't go 40. 80 miles, couldn't go 100. So he's always encouraging me. I know he always liked to see that, but he was really huge in everything he's done for me.
And he did it, all these years later. It's very motivational for me as an oncologist that our research can change the lives of patients, and that these advancements are a lot closer than they seem.
I've always looked at cancer as being like an opponent that has to be defeated. I mean, you don't have time to sit back and think about stuff. You need to know what's the plan to get rid of this, and that's the plan you're on. You're not in control now, so you're pretty much along for the ride, but you need to be the best patient you can be. Just having it as an opponent that you need to defeat is the type of mentality I think is good for the cancer patient. So to be more on offense than on defense, if you can be.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspirational. I'd love to just start off by asking you, what was it like to share your story, and what was that experience like to have a film crew follow you around and ask your story, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was very eye-opening for me. I know when I was first approached by Nico and Andy about doing a video about what I did, it really opened my eyes that some of the things that I did are not as common as they should be, and that I live in kind of a sweet spot of cancer healthcare, but not everybody does, and not everybody gets this done. And when I talk to cancer patients about it, some of them don't even know about getting your biomarkers checked, and that was the major thing that really made the difference in my fight. But having the cameras and everything, that was very strange at first, but I knew I had a good story and it needed to get out, and I tried to be as natural as I could be, so it was good to do.
Well, you did a great job, and I guess I'd love to ask, what advice would you have for somebody that was recently diagnosed? They've never heard of the term biomarkers, or they're not quite sure. Seeing your story and listening to us today is the first time they've really heard about it. What's your big takeaway that you would offer?
And I didn't really know how big a role that was going to play. It happened early on, right after I had my partial colectomy. I had the biomarkers checked, but it wasn't until 2 years later that it actually met me up with the science that made the difference. And when I talk to cancer patients about that who are on kind of a role like I was, it's not a given outcome that, you know, I asked them if they had that biomarker checked, because that's how it's personalized, the treatment that's going on. And an amazing thing too is when I first knew I was going to do this clinical trial, it was the biomarkers that hooked me up with that. I was looking at the immunotherapy drug that I would be taking, and it was approved for lung cancer and melanoma. And here I am, an MSI-high colorectal cancer patient, and I've had a family history. I've had cousins pass away from it in the early 90s, and the things that went on with me were not going on in the 90s. So it's very encouraging to see that things like that are happening now for the cancer patient. But it really does, it's really dialing things in. And it's not a shotgun cure to it now. It's really pinpointing the treatments that you may be eligible for. And now what's great too is that this is the drug is now, you know, for colorectal cancer patients like myself, which represent 5% of colorectal cancer patients of MSI high. And now there's another tool in the arsenal to fight it. So that's encouraging too.
That's great. So how does it feel to be the face of a campaign?
It's been a great outcome, and it continues on. It's very enlightening. I enjoy talking to other patients about it. A lot of my coworkers, they saw what I went through, and like in the video, they tell me now that they knew it was rough, and some of them didn't think I was going to make it. So to see me now and what I'm doing, the cycling part of it, as a patient, I always thought about stuff that cancer took away, and my fight was always to take it back, and cycling was part of that. And every time I get on a bike, it's like getting in cancer space. It tried to stop me from doing that. So, but the campaign is great. It opened my eyes. I hope it opens up other patients' eyes to get this done and to promote yourself. You need to get that, make that happen.
Aurora or Andy, do you guys have any questions for Tom?
Tom, how are you doing now? It's been a little while since we filmed that video, so how are you doing?
Right. It's well, I'm on a Lynch syndrome protocol, and I was getting a colonoscopy every year, and I'll be doing that from here on out, I believe. But I was getting 2 CT scans and a lot of blood work, but now I'm down to 1 CT scan a year, and I've been very active in doing some cycling events for cancer research in the area.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing well. So, things are going great.
Great to hear, Tom. It's really great to hear.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you, Tom. So the question, you had mentioned that that you had some family members that had cancer. Did you know, were they diagnosed with, it was a colon cancer, and then did they have Lynch syndrome, do you know, or were they tested for it?
Yes, back in the 90s, I remember this because they were in their 30s, and from diagnosis to my first cousin passing away, I think it was 1 month. And wow. the second cousin from the same mother, my father's sister, but he put on an epic battle. It was an amazing thing to watch. He was going everywhere looking for solutions, and it was a Marine. I mean, strong guy and very driven, and it just didn't happen for him. And to see it happen for me now shows how just how far we've come to find solutions to these problems.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your family, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that my aunt did mention that it was Lynch syndrome, but nothing triggered the response that my biomarker evaluation did. When my results came in, it was animate that everybody on my father's side of the family, all his sisters and even my brother, they get tested. Now, we knew my one aunt was going to test positive, but everybody else turned out great. But it really did trigger that test. But back then that didn't happen. So it probably should have, but it didn't.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your family, but glad that actually the rest of your family got tested, which is
right.
Great. So thank you, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Tom. We had a couple of questions, so I wanted to go ahead and ask these questions, and then also just remind everyone that you could email us at info@globalcca.org, or you could reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Our handle is @globalcrc, and we'll take your questions and we'll be posting them to the website. So one question we have here is, should all cancer patients have their biomarkers tested, or should they only be tested for certain cancers?
Sure, so that's a great question. So, I think that it does vary from country to country, but in where we are today, I think all patients should ask their doctor what biomarker tests may be available for them. One, for their specific tumor type, there may be a biomarker test that is that's available for them. And now there are some tests that are out there. There's an FDA-approved test that can look at a number of different genes, regardless of what tumor you have. And we're starting to see. We're seeing it in the United States, and I would say they're considering globally as well. A lot of the governments are talking about these. What they're called is like tumor agnostic indications, meaning you might have a biomarker. Somebody could have a different type of cancer, but the same biomarker. And there have been shown that therapies could potentially work in these tumors. So, absolutely, I would say I would ask your oncologist on what tests are available, and then of course consult with your insurance company to ensure that the test will be covered.
Absolutely. Another question we have is, if there's a history of cancer in your family, can you or should you get biomarker testing if there's just a history in your family?
Yeah, so I think I think it's worth speaking to your doctor about. That was the exact question I had asked Tom, is especially because the rest of his family, that if they have something called Lynch syndrome, there's a high predisposition to develop colon cancer. So there are certain markers that could predispose you for cancer. There's, of course, the question of, it's very difficult to say that, like, we should test every single patient in the world that's healthy. But for patients who have a family history of cancer, it's very important to notify your doctor that you have this family history, because there may be some specific biomarker testing that they would recommend.
Great, thank you. Tom, did you have any questions for Aurora, our expert?
No, that was
any more questions?
She just answered. Yeah, she just answered, because I know it tells me I probably should have had some kind of testing done a long time ago. So that just didn't happen. So hopefully things like that will start happening now. That's a good preventive thing to do.
Yeah, we've definitely come a long way, and especially you're starting to see, there's people understand that the sooner that you get a diagnosis, the better it is. It's always a question with the, in terms of preventative measures versus, before diagnosis. And it's tough because, I think it's difficult for every single person to get tested, but particularly if you have a family history of cancer, that is something you should discuss with your physician.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, so Andy, we're going to wrap this up.
Yep, I do. Nicole, first, thanks to you for all of your hard work and getting this done, and in moderating this panel and all the logistics. So thank you very much. Aurora, thank you for helping us and explaining things in a way that we can all understand these difficult technical details. And Tom, the superstar, you know, when you say you should have done all this so many years ago, well, you just didn't know. But you're part of what's going to educate everybody. It's what you're doing by going out and telling people that is going to save lives. And we can't thank you enough for being part of this campaign and for helping us spread awareness about the importance of knowing your biomarker and really how it can save somebody's life. So I want to thank both of you, all three of you really, and I want to thank everybody for watching this. And again, remind you, if you have any questions about biomarkers, please email us at info@globalcca.org. Reach out to us at social media at globalcrc. And I want to again thank our sponsors, who are Bristol Myers Squibb, Bayer, and Seattle Genetics. Without the support of our sponsors, you know, our programs don't run, and so we really appreciate their support in many different ways. And I want to thank all of you again for watching and wish you all the best.